Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 24th of September, comes to you from the south of France. I'm actually here for a few days on holiday. We start by looking at the dollar index. You see it's climbing higher, just bullish in all three time frames. Saw a big jump there yesterday and got lots of upside targets. So dollar bullish is the theme. And we'll always return to that dollar theme while we're in that long-term dollar uptrend. And we're seeing here the euro is weaker against the dollar. We're back below the 110 level, so euro is suffering. Against the Japanese yen, we're seeing that the dollar is actually looking a little bit weaker, so that's an interesting aspect where the yen is actually still the strongest currency of the majors. Looking at sterling, we're sitting at 124.37. We're back into bearish territory against that stronger dollar, and against the euro, we're sitting at 113.12. Also into bearish territory. Against the Swiss franc, we're sitting at 123, so bearish here against the Swissy as well. Bitcoin is struggling below the $10,000 mark, so we're still seeing bearish. Downside target to 9,500, a further 1.5% below here. So we do see Bitcoin breaking down slightly. The US market was flat overnight. We're just struggling to break to those new highs. And the NASDAQ much the same, just struggling to break to those new highs. And we're seeing on the short-term chart, we're slightly bearish below the cloud. And the Dow was up slightly yesterday, but again, it can't break to new highs either. The Russell 2000 just holding on. Futures this morning, we're seeing the S&P future up 0.2%, the Nasdaq E-mini up by a similar amount. So it does suggest we might see the US markets opening slightly higher. The UK market is up 0.2% on the blue chip 100 index this morning, and on Midcaps, it's down by 0.3%. The DAX is up slightly, and the CAC Current is also up slightly, just holding on to these bullish trends on the short-term chart. Japan up 0.5%, and the Hang Seng up 0.3%. The Chinese market is holding on as well. It was up just under 1/3% as well. The Sensex pulling back by 0.2% after its big jump last week. We saw here that massive jump on that tax cut, but not enough to really send this market into medium-term bullish territory. The S&P 200 index, the Australian market, also holding on to its bullishness, and Brent crude sitting at $64, just sitting in the doldrums. After the rise on the Saudi attacks, we're seeing here that just not holding on to those gains. So that's still long-term bearish for Brent crude, and the same for WTI. Of course, we're seeing just struggling to break to new highs. If we look at NatGas, we see here US NatGas was also lower overnight, sitting at 252. So that's quite key as well. Looking at gold, sitting at 1521, so we're well and truly back above that $1,500 level, bullish on all three time frames. Silver, similarly bullish on all three time frames, of course. And US 10-year yields sitting at 1.7%. So they've pulled back from the 180s, 190s level that we saw just a week ago. And of course, if you look at German bond prices, they are rising again on the back of those falling yields. So we're just seeing that jump back to short-term bullish on the bonds, looking like we're finding support there. Taking a quick look at the stocks overnight, these data coming from Yahoo Finance. If we look at American Express was the best performer, up 1.2%. And United Health Group were the worst performer, down 1.7%. So we're seeing quite a disparity there. United Health Group just breaking down, so we are seeing the relative falling away there. They broke the start of the year to lower levels, and that's not looking so good. The Nasdaq 100, the best performer was Ultra Beauty. They were up 3.7%. So we're seeing quite a few stocks there up at 2 or 3%. The chart looking dire, of course, there. And if we look at the The downside for the Nasdaq, we see here there were still stocks down. Insight Group down 4%, Take Two down 3%. So quite a bit of volatility in the stocks there in the Nasdaq. The Aussie market, the best performer was Premier Investments Limited. They were up 15%, a massive jump for them. And if we look at the downside, we see Eurodollar Limited just continuing to fall there. In the Indian market, of course, we had some massive jumps last week in the Indian market. So we see here Reliance Industries up a further 4%, recovering there. Z Entertainment, they've been a pretty grim chart. They're up 3% overnight. And if we look at the downside in India, we've got Eicher Motors down nearly 5%. They didn't really move on the tax cut, so we're seeing quite a lot of stocks not changing off the back of that. It was limited to a handful, really. UK market, looking at the updates coming in here now live from Yahoo Finance. Royal Bank of Scotland, the best performer this morning, not changing the picture here. Still underperforming the Dow Jones by 25% this year, so not great. But we are seeing the financials looking stronger this morning. On the downside, we've got Auto Trader Group down 2.5%. So they're falling away. And we see here retailers featuring in the bearish moves this morning there. On the 250, we've got Card Factory. They're up 7%, so they've jumped, but not enough to really change the nature of this chart. And on the downside, we've got Metro Bank down a further 10%, falling away there. Not looking great. And Royal Mail down 4%, so again just falling, underperforming the market by 35% this year. Taking a quick look at Europe now, we've got Sanofi leading the pack in the 50 top stocks in Europe, up 1.3%. Banco Santander, banks generally looking better this morning in Europe. And on the downside, we've got Adidas falling away there, down 0.86%, and Westfield looking lower in Amsterdam as well, down a further 8%, and that chart not looking great either, 0.8% I should say. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.